Rise, my apprentice.
The Jedi Temple, once a place of peace and knowledge, now stood as a tomb for its fallen protectors. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda moved cautiously through the grand halls, their hearts heavy with the weight of their losses. The dim lights flickered above, casting long shadows on the walls as they approached the communications room. Upon reaching the heart of the temple, Obi-Wan's mind swirled with disbelief. The evidence lay before him on the holo recordings. Anakin Skywalker, his apprentice, was at the center of the slaughter. The same man he had trained, trusted, and loved like a brother had turned into a force of destruction. But Obi-Wan couldn't reconcile the man in the recordings with the Anakin he knew. Anakin had been a hero, a beacon of light in the war, and someone Obi-Wan believed could bring balance to the Force. His mind refused to accept that there was no hope left for him. Yet as he stood there, watching the darkness engulf his former apprentice, doubt crept in. Could Anakin still be saved? Or would confronting him force Obi-Wan into an impossible choice? Obi-Wan hesitated. He couldn't abandon Anakin to the dark side, but if he tried and failed, it might mean Anakin's death by his hand. Was there truly any hope? Or was it better to leave this burden to Yoda and spare himself the potential horror of striking down the man he once called brother? Master Yoda, his expression somber and resolute, turned to Obi-Wan after a moment of reflection.
"Confront him. You must,"
Yoda said, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of the task ahead.
"Young Skywalker, your apprentice, he is. Only you can reach him. Face the Emperor. I must. If successful, peace we may bring."
Obi-Wan felt his heart sink further. The thought of confronting Anakin was unbearable. He had seen the recordings, witnessed the devastation Anakin had caused. Yet, even with all the evidence of his fall to the dark side, the thought of killing his brother was something Obi-Wan couldn't bring himself to consider.
I can't kill him, Master,"
Obi-Wan admitted, his voice trembling.
"I don't know if I could ever strike him down. He's still Anakin."
Yoda exhaled deeply, closing his eyes. Reaching out through the Force, he touched Anakin's presence, feeling the raw emotions, the anger, the torment that now consumed the once promising Jedi. But beneath all of that darkness, there was still a flicker of light, a faint spark of the man Anakin had once been.
Great pain I sense in him, but gone he is not. Light there still is. If reach him you can, save him you must. Go, not with thoughts of harm, but of redemption.
Obi-Wan felt a surge of hope rise within him. Yoda, despite all he had seen and sensed, still believed that there was a chance, however small, that Anakin could be saved. Obi-Wan nodded, determination building within him. He wouldn't go to Mustafar to kill his brother. He would go to save him. Obi-Wan moved swiftly through the empty streets of Coruscant, his heart weighed down by the terrible truth he had uncovered. He knew there was only one person who could help him find Anakin, Padme Amidala. If anyone could know where Anakin had gone, it would be her. He arrived at her apartment, where the once vibrant rooms were now filled with an uneasy stillness. Padme stood by the window, her expression distant. When she turned to face Obi-Wan, there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes, but it quickly faded when she saw the grim look on his face.
Obi-Wan, what's happened?
Obi-Wan swallowed, knowing the words he was about to speak would shatter her world.
"Padme, Anakin has fallen to the dark side. He's joined the Sith."
Her face paled, but she shook her head in disbelief.
No, that's not possible. You must be mistaken.
"I wish I were, but it's true. Anakin has done terrible things, Padme. He's killed Jedi, younglings. The man you knew is gone."
Padme's breath caught in her throat, tears welling up in her eyes.
No. He wouldn't do something like that.
Obi-Wan stepped closer, his voice pleading.
"I don't want to believe it either, but I've seen the evidence. He's consumed by the dark side. I need to find him, Padme. If there's any chance of saving him, you have to help me. Please, tell me where he is."
Padme lowered her gaze, her hands trembling. She knew where Anakin had gone. He had told her he was heading to Mustafar to deal with the Separatists, but fear for his safety gripped her heart. She couldn't betray him, not to Obi-Wan. She couldn't risk the possibility that Obi-Wan might harm him.
I don't know where he is,
she lied, her voice unsteady. Obi-Wan could sense the conflict within her, but he couldn't push her any further. His heart ached seeing her torn between love and the truth.
"Padme, I'm not here to harm him. I only want to bring him back."
She didn't respond, the silence between them thick with sorrow. Obi-Wan stood in the shadows, watching Padme as she quietly prepared her ship for departure. He knew she wouldn't give him the truth, not openly, but he also knew that Padme's love for Anakin would drive her to find him, to try and bring him back herself. And so, as she boarded her ship bound for Mustafar, Obi-Wan slipped aboard, hidden and silent. The journey was tense, and though Obi-Wan was unseen, he felt the storm of emotions swirling within Padme, fear, hope, and love all battled within her. As the ship landed on the fiery shores of Mustafar, Obi-Wan stayed hidden, waiting for the right moment. He could feel Anakin's presence now, dark and suffocating, but he also sensed the small flicker of light still buried deep within him, the light Yoda had spoken of. Padme exited the ship and rushed to meet Anakin, who stood among the smoldering ruins of the Separatist leaders. His once bright eyes were now clouded with anger and confusion. But as Padme approached him, her voice soft and pleading, a brief calm came over him.
Anakin, please, we could still leave all of this behind. We could go back to Naboo, raise our children, be free from all this darkness. I know you're still in there. I know there's still good in you.
For a fleeting moment, Anakin felt the weight of the dark side lift from his shoulders. Her words reached the part of him that longed for peace, for the life he had imagined with her. He took a step closer, his anger subsiding, and was about to speak when something caught his eye. From the corner of his vision, he saw a figure stepping off the ship. Obi-Wan. Anakin's face twisted with fury.
You brought him here.
He growled, his voice laced with betrayal.
You brought Obi-Wan to kill me.
No, Anakin, I didn't.
But before she could finish, Anakin's rage overtook him. His hand extended, and with a flick of his wrist, the force tightened around Padme's throat. She gasped for air, her eyes wide with shock as the invisible grip squeezed tighter.
I trusted you,
Anakin shouted, his voice full of pain and betrayal.
You were with him all along.
In his fury, Anakin didn't even realize what he was doing until Padme's body went limp in his grasp. Her unconscious form crumpled to the ground as Anakin released her, his eyes burning with hatred. Obi-Wan, who had watched in horror, stepped forward.
Anakin, what have you done?
Anakin turned to face him, his expression cold and unrecognizable.
You turned her against me?
Obi-Wan rushed to Padme's side, his heart pounding in his chest. He placed a hand gently on her, reaching out with the force to check for signs of life. A wave of relief washed over him as he sensed her faint but steady presence. She was alive, for now. Standing, Obi-Wan turned to face Anakin, who stood rigid, his chest heaving with fury. There was no hatred in Obi-Wan's eyes, only sorrow and the faint hope that he could still save his friend, the friend he had failed.
Anakin, you don't have to do this. Come back with me. Let's end this madness.
Anakin's face twisted in anger.
Don't lecture me, Obi-Wan. I see through the lies of the Jedi. I've brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire.
The words struck Obi-Wan like a blow. The boy he had trained, the one who had once fought for justice, was now speaking like a tyrant. Internally, Obi-Wan's frustration burned, but he knew anger would not help here. He had to remain composed. With a deep breath, Obi-Wan bent down and unclipped his lightsaber from his belt. Slowly, he tossed it to the ground between them. The clatter of the metal echoed against the harsh landscape of Mustafar.
I'm not here to fight you, Anakin. I'm here to apologize.
Anakin looked at him, stunned, the anger flickering in his eyes replaced by confusion.
I'm sorry I failed you. I didn't see what was happening to you. I didn't do enough to help you, to support you.
Anakin's expression hardened again.
It's the Jedi who failed me. They were blind. They're corrupt. They don't care about peace, only their power.
Obi-Wan stood still, listening. He took in every word, every accusation, and for a moment he saw things from Anakin's perspective. The Jedi had been flawed. They had made mistakes.
You're right, Anakin. The Jedi were wrong. The Council was blind, and in many ways, they lost their way. But the path you've chosen, it's destroying you. Look at what just happened. Look at Padme, the woman you love, the woman you swore to protect. This power has corrupted you, twisted you into someone you're not.
Anakin's eyes darted toward Padme's unconscious form, the realization hitting him like a crashing wave. He had sworn to protect her, yet in his anger, he had nearly killed her. The dark side had consumed him, pushing him to do something he would never have imagined. Tears welled up in Anakin's eyes as he stared at his hands, trembling with the weight of his actions. Obi-Wan's words pierced through the fog of hatred and anger that had clouded his mind. He was right. This wasn't who he was. Anakin's knees buckled and he collapsed to the ground, his shoulders shaking with sobs.
What have I done? What have I become?
Obi-Wan moved quickly, kneeling beside his fallen friend. He placed his arms around Anakin, pulling him close.
It's not too late, Anakin. We can still make this right. But we have to act now. We need to help Padme, and we need to help Yoda stop Palpatine. Together we can fix this.
Anakin, still shaking with emotion, nodded weakly. He had lost so much, done so much damage, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, hope flickered in his heart. He wasn't alone anymore. He could still make things right. With Padme's unconscious body safely aboard the ship, Obi-Wan and Anakin prepared to set course for Coruscant. The weight of their past actions and the battle that lay ahead hung heavily between them. The once vibrant friendship had been scarred, but in this moment there was a shared purpose. A glimmer of hope that balance could still be restored. As the ship broke through Mustafar's atmosphere and into the stars, Anakin stood at the viewport, staring into the vastness of space, his mind racing. His heart was conflicted. He had done terrible things, but now, perhaps, there was a chance for redemption. Yet, the shadow of Palpatine loomed large.
Obi-Wan,
Anakin began, turning to his old master. His voice was serious, almost resigned.
you're not powerful enough to face him. Palpatine is too strong. I've seen what he can do. He won't hold back. If I go to him, I may be able to stop him, but you...
Obi-Wan looked at Anakin, sensing the fear and concern in his words.
Anakin, we'll face him together. We have to.
Anakin shook his head, his expression resolute.
No, you need to take Padme to get the medical attention she needs. She's more important than this fight. More important than me. If I don't make it back...
Anakin paused, his voice breaking slightly.
Tell her I've always loved her.
Obi-Wan's heart ached at the raw emotion in Anakin's words. The man standing before him wasn't the Sith Lord who had brought destruction to the Jedi, but the Anakin he had once known. The man who had loved deeply, cared deeply, and who was now willing to sacrifice himself to make things right. Obi-Wan, seeing the determination in Anakin's eyes, reluctantly nodded.
Very well, Anakin. But if you're going to face Palpatine, don't do it out of hate. Remember who you are. Stay in the light.
Anakin gave him a solemn nod, his mind already focused on what was to come. As the ship continued its course toward Coruscant, both men knew that this was a turning point, either in the redemption of the Chosen One or the final fall of the galaxy into darkness. By the time Anakin's ship touched down on Coruscant, the devastation within the Senate building had already taken place. The once grand halls were now marred with the signs of a fierce battle between Yoda and the Emperor. Smoke billowed from shattered pillars, and sparks flew from damaged equipment, the aftermath of a fight between titans. Anakin rushed through the destroyed corridors, his senses heightened, searching for Palpatine. He knew Yoda had been here and had fought Palpatine, but the dark presence of the Sith Lord still lingered. The battle wasn't over yet. Suddenly, from behind the shadows of the ruined Senate chamber, Palpatine emerged, his face twisted in a snarl of rage and triumph. He had driven Yoda away, his power solidified, but Palpatine was not expecting what came next. With the flick of his wrist, Anakin ignited his lightsaber, the blue blade humming to life. He moved quickly, catching Palpatine off guard with a flurry of powerful strikes. The sheer force of Anakin's attack drove the Sith Lord back, his yellow eyes widening in surprise.
You!
Palpatine hissed, barely managing to block a vicious slash aimed at his chest.
You were meant to serve me.
Anakin's eyes, now clear of the darkness that had clouded his vision, locked onto Palpatine with unshakable resolve.
Not anymore!
He growled, pushing forward with a relentless assault. Palpatine snarled and countered with his crimson blade. The two locked in a brutal exchange of blows. Each strike sent shockwaves through the ruined Senate chamber, the sound of their lightsabers clashing echoing through the empty halls. Anakin fought with a determination and clarity he hadn't felt in what seemed like an eternity, while Palpatine unleashed his full fury, a mixture of shock and fury surging through him at this betrayal. The battle raged on, with neither giving an inch. Anakin's strikes were filled with raw power, fueled by his need to right his wrongs and destroy the man who had manipulated him. But Palpatine, even in his surprise, was a master of the dark side, and his agility and cunning kept him in the fight. He used the terrain to his advantage, leaping between Senate pods, sending bolts of Sith lightning crackling toward Anakin when he could. At one point, Palpatine managed to knock Anakin back with a powerful force push, sending him crashing against a broken pillar. The impact winded him, and for a moment, it seemed as though Palpatine might gain the upper hand.
Foolish boy.
Palpatine sneered, raising his hand as arcs of lightning danced between his fingers.
You could have had everything, power beyond your wildest dreams.
Anakin barely had time to roll out of the way as the lightning struck the ground where he had been moments before. His muscles burned, his body worn from the fight, but he couldn't stop. He wouldn't stop. Drawing on the Force, Anakin charged once more, his lightsaber clashing with Palpatine's in a series of rapid strikes. Their fight moved up and down the platforms of the Senate chamber, with each fighter gaining and losing ground in a desperate bid for control. Palpatine, sensing his advantage slipping, began to fight more viciously. He unleashed a series of rapid jabs and swipes, nearly driving Anakin to his knees. But Anakin, fueled by his love for Padme and the knowledge of what he needed to do, fought back. With a powerful slash, he disarmed Palpatine, sending the Sith Lord's lightsaber skidding across the floor. Palpatine, however, was far from finished. He snarled and leaped at Anakin, unleashing a blast of dark side energy that knocked him to the ground. Standing over him, Palpatine raised his hand once again, ready to strike Anakin down with another surge of lightning. But Anakin, with every ounce of strength he had left, grabbed his lightsaber and thrust it upward just as Palpatine brought his own hand down. The two blades clashed for a final time, and in a single deadly motion, both warriors drove their lightsabers into each other. Anakin's blue blade pierced through Palpatine's chest, while Palpatine's crimson blade found its mark. The moment was still, as if time itself had stopped. Both men stared at each other, shock and pain etched across their faces. Palpatine's eyes widened, his body shaking as the life began to drain from him. Anakin, his breath shallow, felt his own strength fading fast. They stood there, locked in this final, tragic moment, both having delivered the killing blow to the other. Both the light and the dark, the Sith and the Chosen One, had met their end. As the ship carrying Padme Amidala landed, medical droids rushed to her aid. Despite the trauma she had endured, she survived, and soon after, she gave birth to her twins, Luke and Leia. The children were a symbol of hope, a light in the darkness that had threatened to consume the galaxy. Obi-Wan, watching over the scene, felt a deep sense of relief. Though Anakin was gone, he had redeemed himself in his final moments, bringing balance to the Force by ending Palpatine's reign of terror. It was a tragic victory, but it was victory nonetheless. With Padme recovered, she joined the remnants of the Jedi who had been scattered to the far reaches of the Outer Rim during the rise of the Empire. Jedi like Ahsoka Tano and Cal Kestis, who had survived the horrors of Order 66, gathered once more, reuniting under the protection of allies such as Bail Organa and Mon Mothma. Together, they formed a coalition dedicated to rebuilding what had been lost, keeping alive the teachings of the Jedi while ensuring that democracy would rise again. The Senate, thrown into chaos after Palpatine's death, struggled to regain control. The vacuum left by the fall of the Emperor led to power grabs and political infighting. But in the midst of the turmoil, voices like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma rose above the fray, calling for the restoration of the Republic and its democratic ideals. Their passion and resolve resonated across the galaxy, rallying systems that had once been held in the grip of the Empire. Slowly but surely, the Republic began to heal. The Senate was rebuilt, not as a tool of oppression, but as a place where the people's voices could be heard once more. Democracy was reborn, and with it came a renewed sense of hope.